This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this crazy slim and light 15.66-inch laptop is the Samsung Galaxy Book Pro 360, so 360-degree convertible. There is a non-360 version of this as well, and this is the highest end of the several laptops that Samsung is offering for 2021, but still, it's priced pretty friendly, starting at $1099, the higher end configurations around $1299, and I've always reviewed the Samsung laptops with the S Pen because they are so great for art. They use the S Pen, which is Wacom EMR, which is a very close cousin to the Wacom EMR you see in things like the Cintiq Pro. We are going to look at it now. So yes, the S Pen is included with this. No, there is not a silo for it, but that allows for them to give you something that's a bit bigger in size and more comfortable to use. It's available in two colors. If you don't like this one, essentially it looks like pink, which is called Mystic Bronze. It looks a little more pink than Mystic Bronze in Samsung Galaxy phones. There's also a Mystic Navy, which is a dark blue color, so you have your choice there. There are two configurations available with those two prices that I mentioned. There should be a third one coming because 5G will soon be available as an option as well. The configurations, both of them are Core i7 Ultrabook CPUs, Intel 11th Gen. This is an Intel Evo platform. And the lower end configuration has 8 gigs of RAM. The higher end has 16 gigs of RAM. The lower end configuration is 512 gigs of storage. The higher end is 1 terabyte of storage. It's an M.2 NVMe SSD. The RAM is soldered on this one. And one thing we haven't mentioned yet, which is probably one of the most exciting, is this has an OLED display, or Samsung calls it Super AMOLED, same nomenclature they use for their phones. So that means nice, zingy, saturated colors, really great black levels, and nice contrast levels too. So very pretty to look at. Unfortunately, also really, really glossy. And now a shout out to our sponsor, the Trend Micro Home Network Security Device. So this little box comes with an Ethernet cable. It's as simple as plugging this into your home Wi-Fi router, and it starts monitoring all inbound and outbound traffic. The things that you would hope a firewall would do. So things like malicious websites and viruses and all that sort of thing. And it also monitors all the smart devices on your network, which, you know, how often do you check to make sure your robotic vacuum cleaner has the latest firmware, or your refrigerator these days? So you don't want hackers doing monkey business with those, do you? So this device will let you know. It'll actually let you know if there are updates for the devices on your network. Beyond that, it is great for keeping your kids safe too. I find this very useful. So beyond the usual stuff a firewall does, you can do things like set limits for things like social network use for their mental health, if not your own. And you can also set it so it monitors not just their computer, but the tablet, the PlayStation. And then, of course, it'll block malicious websites that you don't want your kids going to. Be sure to use my link in the description to save $20. And now back to our video. So this laptop weighs around 3 pounds, which is under 1.5 kilograms, and is 11.9 millimeters thick or thin, depending on how you want to look at it. That's LG gram competition territory. And honestly, Samsung has been competing with LG for years, making very light and thin laptops. It is an aluminum casing, so it's fairly rigid. It's good looking. It's not as unique looking as some of the Samsung laptops we've seen, like the beautiful one that had this contrasting chrome and the dark blue top on it and all those sort of pretty things, but it certainly is pleasant looking. Because it is so skinny, you're not going to get any of the bigger ports. No USB-A, no HDMI, for example. You do get a Thunderbolt 4 port and 2 USB-C ports, so you can do display out and docks and all that sort of thing with it. A headphone jack and a micro SD card slot. And that is it, folks. This is a durable, rigid aluminum chassis. It might be somewhat scratch-prone. We weren't the first one to get this review loaner from Samsung, I can tell, because it has a nice size scratch on the lid. So obviously, it probably is possible to damage the finish on this if you are aggressive with it. The keyboard on this also is pretty low travel. It's white backlit, and given how thin it is, sometimes Samsung really works some magic with really thin and light designs and low-key travel. But this one, to me, just feels sort of like an XPS 13 from Dell, which means short key travel, not a lot of tactility. I mean, it's usable. It's just wouldn't be my first pick. Certainly, we're not talking about ThinkPad wonderfulness or something. The large Microsoft Precision trackpad on the other hand is quite good. For performance, this is an Intel Core i7 11th Gen. Again, the Ultrabook U Series 28 watts CPUs, quad core. And performance is right on par with what we'd expect from this, and it matches its competitors in that respect. We do have the 16 gig of RAM model, and that's DDR4 low power X RAM, and we have a 1 TB NVMe SSD, which benchmarks decently, not class leading, but it's pretty good, and you could upgrade it yourself. We'll talk about the internals later. Heat on this, despite the fact it's thin and it's metal, isn't bad, even when pushing it hard. The fans, you'll hear the fan when you plug it into power for charging. Otherwise, if you're using it unplugged, not so much, but there is a noticeable amount of fan action going on, but not annoying, but there. Speakers on this are stereo speakers. They are AKG branded with Dolby Atmos software. And as usual, Samsung does a better than average job with laptop speakers. They sound pretty good. There's some fullness to them and there's some volume. It's still a thin laptop, so, you know, it's not a 16-inch MacBook Pro either in terms of audio, but pretty decent. This is a 720p webcam, no surprise, and a fingerprint scanner embedded in the power button, so it's pretty much seamless integration there. There is no Windows Hello IR camera on this. In terms of software, it's usual sort of bloat of Samsung's own software. If you own a Galaxy phone, which many of you might who are attracted to this brand, there's Samsung companion software, all that sort of thing. The software to control the device is always, I feel, is pretty good on this. You can do things like choose from a bunch of different color profiles. I'm just using the auto dynamic mode where it self-adjusts, but you can set it to sRGB, Adobe RGB P3. You get the idea there. And it has a nice feature where if you use it plugged in a lot, you can set it to not charge to 100%, only charge like 85% to improve battery longevity overall. And there's a couple of other features you can see running across the screen right now. So that's pretty well done. One thing I'm not thrilled at is typically Samsung has an updater app that works just fine, but I like it when you also have the alternative of going to the website and manually grabbing that stuff. But no, you have to use Samsung's updater app to do that. All right, so let's talk about the S Pen. It's as good as ever. Again, Wacom EMR technology, so you've got your pressure sensitivity here. You've got silky smooth response. It's one of the best out there. And Wacom EMR is up there with the Apple Pencil. And this might not be as high-end as what you see in a Cintiq Pro from Wacom EMR, but it's still pretty good. Palm rejection is reasonably good on this, and the pen response is just nice. So this is, most laptops with pens I don't particularly recommend to artists. I mean, you don't have much of a choice. You get what you can get, but this one is cream of the crop. And I'm glad that Samsung isn't pricing it super high, so you don't have to say, well, I have to spend so much more to get this, because you really don't. And if you're doing just photo retouching, or if you're doing fine art style painting that I tend to do, it's just good stuff. This has a 68 watt-hour battery and a very compact, the smallest yet I've seen from Samsung laptops, fast charger, 65 watt. And you would think with an OLED display, which typically does consume more power, assuming that you're showing white backgrounds in Word or web pages or whatever, I was surprised to see an Intel Evo certification here, which means long battery life. Now, Samsung claims up to 20 hours. I have no idea how you would do that, honestly, but I was averaging about 10 hours of light use, which for a laptop with this big a screen, and again, OLED, no full HD, not 4K, not 2K or anything, that's pretty good. And with my tests, I set brightness to 200 nits, and it's Office, it's a little web browsing, it's a little Slack, and a little bit of Photoshop for my tests. To get inside, you have to remove the rubber feet, and I suggest something like this sort of tool here to get them up. That seemed to work the easiest compared to anything else. Just pop them off. There is no adhesive on these, yay. And then there are Phillips head screws, just 4. So that part's pretty easy. Yeah, prying it off, I started around the back edges of this. It's pretty firm. You need a pry tool. A guitar pick just didn't want to fit, so I used the iFixit clamshell, I call it clam opener tool, very carefully because that's metal and you don't want to scratch it either, but then it came right off. And this is what the underside looks like right here. And here are the internals. 2 fans, you don't see that too often on an Ultrabook, and maybe that's why it helps stay cool and why you can actually hear the fan noise, particularly when it's plugged in. And this is the M.2 SSD right here, and really it's a strange looking one. It's a full 2280 height plugged into the M2 socket, but it didn't look like they really needed all of that, and they just kind of made it long to fit in the slot. Well, there it is. Battery is right here. The speakers are flanking it. Not particularly big drivers, but hey, they sound pretty decent. And then we have the Wi-Fi card, which is an Intel Wi-Fi 6E card, AX210. That's nice, and that's soldered on. Good thing it's nice because it's soldered. It's there for life. And RAM is soldered on with this, so you won't be replacing that. So that's the Samsung Galaxy Book Pro 360, pretty in pink and also available in navy if pink ain't your thing. It is so thin, it is so light, it's sturdily built. It has an OLED display. It has a fantastic S Pen for you art types out there. Particularly nice, of course, note takers could enjoy it too. The display being full HD, I know it would be nice if it was 2K resolution, but battery life would have taken a hit. So I get that. It looks nice enough. I won't complain too much. And the brightness on this, 300 nits, it's not exactly impressive, but OLED always feels brighter to the eyes than it is. So unless you're going to be using this in really bright ambient situations, it should be okay. But the glossiness, annoying, and really just annoying. And that is a challenge because of the fact it's not that bright. But overall, battery life is good on this. The price is right too, honestly. And if you want it but smaller, there is a 13.3-inch model also available. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.